He watched her from across the room, his eyes tracing her every movement. She sat on the couch, phone in hand, her fingers dancing over the screen with practiced ease. A small, secret smile playing on her lips, a smile that seemed to hold a world of secrets.
I knew that smile. It was the same smile she used to give me, but now it wasn't meant for me. It was meant for someone else.
She laughed, a light, tinkling sound that grated on his nerves, a sound that once brought him joy.
Who was she texting? Who had taken my place in her heart? Who had captured her attention so completely that she forgot I was even in the room?
He knew the answer, he just didn't want to believe it. The truth was too painful to accept. The signs were all there, glaring and undeniable. The late-night calls she whispered through, thinking he was asleep. The way she pulled away from his touch, as if his hands burned her. The scent of a cologne that lingered in the air, unfamiliar and unwelcome, a scent that wasn't his. He tried to focus on his book, but the words swam before his eyes, refusing to make sense. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply, terribly wrong. A feeling that gnawed at his insides.
I studied her profile, the curve of her neck, the way she held herself, the way her hair fell across her shoulders, so effortlessly beautiful. She was beautiful, I had to give her that. Her beauty was undeniable, but her beauty felt different now, tainted by the secrets she kept, secrets that were tearing us apart.
He decided to take a chance. He needed to know. He rose from his chair and walked casually towards the hallway, pausing by the antique mirror that hung there. It was positioned perfectly to reflect the screen of his wife's phone.
I glanced at her reflection, my heart pounding in my chest. She hadn't noticed me. Her eyes were glued to the screen, her fingers flying across the keyboard, and then I saw it.
The name that flashed across her screen. It was his brother's name, his own flesh and blood. Betrayal cut through him like a knife. His wife was having an affair. And not just with anyone, with his brother. The shrill ringing of the phone startled him, jolting him out of his thoughts. It was an unexpected interruption, one that seemed to pierce through the quiet tension that had settled in the room. He turned away from the mirror, trying to compose himself. His wife glanced up from her seat, her eyes betraying a flicker of guilt that she couldn't quite hide. Her eyes were wide, filled with a mix of surprise and guilt. It was as if she had been caught in the act of something she shouldn't have been doing. He watched as she quickly silenced the call, her cheeks flushing a deep pink. But the phone rang again, and then again, each ring more insistent than the last. Whoever it was, they were persistent. The ringing seemed to echo in the room, creating an almost unbearable tension.
"Aren't you going to answer that?" he asked, his curiosity piqued by the repeated calls.
"It's probably just a telemarketer," she mumbled, her voice lacking conviction. Her gaze darted nervously around the room, as if searching for an escape from the situation.
The phone stopped ringing abruptly, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. A moment later, a text message flashed on the screen, breaking the silence once more. He was close enough to see the preview of the message, his curiosity growing with each passing second. It was from his brother, a name that brought a mix of emotions to the surface.
"It's your brother," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He said it with a flat tone, as if trying to mask any underlying feelings. "He says it's an emergency," he added, his expression growing more serious.
"Oh," she breathed, her surprise evident. "Oh no, what could it be?" she wondered aloud, her worry growing.
He shrugged, feigning indifference, though his mind was racing. "You should call him back," he suggested, trying to sound casual.
He watched as she dialed the number, her hand trembling slightly, betraying her anxiety. He listened intently as she made excuses, her voice tight with anxiety. Her voice was filled with tension, each word carefully chosen. His brother needed someone to cover his night shift, a request that couldn't be ignored. He was sick, unable to stop throwing up, and it had to be tonight. The urgency of the situation was clear. It had to be tonight.
"Of course," she said, her voice softening with relief. Her voice softened, a hint of relief creeping in. "Of course I'll tell him," she agreed, nodding as she spoke.
He met her eyes, a silent understanding passing between them. A plan was forming in his mind, one that he was determined to see through. He was going to beat them at their own game, no matter what it took. He waited until the front door clicked shut behind him, then allowed himself a grim smile. The trap was set. He heard the shower running, followed by the telltale click of her heels against the hardwood floor. He knew she wouldn't be able to resist the opportunity. He had become predictable, their marriage a comfortable rut. But tonight she expected excitement, danger.
I imagined her primping in front of the mirror, choosing the dress that clung to her curves just so, the one I always hated. I pictured her applying lipstick, a shade of crimson that screamed confidence and infidelity.
He chuckled to himself. She was putting on a show for his brother, playing the part of the temptress. Little did she know the joke was on her. He glanced at his watch. It was almost time. He slipped out the back door, melting into the night.
She checked her reflection one last time, smoothing down her dress. The anticipation was palpable, her heart racing with every passing second. She'd been looking forward to this night for weeks, planning every detail meticulously. The dress she wore was her favorite, a deep shade of red that made her feel both powerful and beautiful. She felt a thrill of excitement, a sense of liberation. It was a rare feeling, one she cherished deeply. Tonight she was free from all worries, free to be herself. The world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the promise of the night ahead. Tonight was about living, about taking what she desired. She had decided that nothing would hold her back. Not tonight. She was determined to seize every moment, to embrace her desires fully and without hesitation.
She heard a knock at the door and her heart skipped a beat. He was here. The moment she had been waiting for had finally arrived. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach.
She flung open the door, a welcoming smile on her face. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she greeted him, her heart swelling with happiness.
Her lover stood on the doorstep, a bouquet of red roses in hand. The sight of the flowers made her heart flutter even more. It was a gesture that spoke volumes, a symbol of his affection and thoughtfulness. He was even more handsome than she remembered, his eyes dark and intense. There was a depth to his gaze that drew her in, making her feel like the only person in the world.
"You look beautiful," he murmured, leaning in to kiss her. His words were soft, but they carried a weight that made her feel cherished and adored.
She pulled him inside, eager to shut out the world. The door closed behind them, sealing them in their own private sanctuary where nothing else mattered. Tonight it was just the two of them, or so she thought. The night was young, and the possibilities were endless. They had the whole evening to themselves to explore and enjoy each other's company.
They settled on the couch, his arm around her waist, her head on his chest. It was a moment of pure contentment, a feeling of being exactly where she was meant to be. They talked in hushed tones, their conversation filled with stolen glances and whispered promises. Every word, every look was a testament to their connection, a bond that seemed unbreakable.
She had never felt so alive, so desired. It was a sensation that enveloped her, making her feel invincible and cherished. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly happy. It was a happiness that came from deep within, a joy that radiated from her very soul. A sharp knock on the door shattered the intimate atmosphere. They both jumped, startled by the intrusion.
What was that?
She whispered, her eyes wide with alarm.
"Don't worry, probably just a neighbor."
He reassured her, his arm tightening around her. He rose to his feet and walked towards the door, his brow furrowed in annoyance. He peered through the peephole, then turned back to her, a puzzled expression on his face.
"It's a delivery for your husband."
A delivery? But he's not expecting anything.
"Maybe it's a surprise."
He opened the door, revealing a man in a nondescript uniform, a briefcase in his hand. The man looked harried, his eyes darting back and forth.
"Are you Mr. Husband's name?"
He hesitated for a moment, then a slow smile spread across his face.
"Yes, that's me."
The delivery man's shoulders seemed to relax.
"Great. Sign here, please."
He scribbled his brother's name on the delivery sheet, his heart pounding with excitement. This was it, their chance to disappear.
What's in it?
She asked, her curiosity piqued. He hefted the briefcase, feeling the satisfying weight of it.
"I don't know, but it feels heavy, valuable."
He snapped open the clasps, and they both gasped. The briefcase was filled with stacks of cash.
Oh my God.
She breathed, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. He grinned, his eyes gleaming with avarice.
Looks like we just hit the jackpot. Let's get out of here.
They were just about to make their escape when they heard another knock at the door. This time it was louder, more insistent. He froze, the briefcase slipping from his grasp and crashing to the floor, spilling its contents across the rug. The air was thick with the smell of fear.
Don't move. Police, open up.
Her blood ran cold. This couldn't be happening. It was all going so perfectly. He lunged for the briefcase, scrambling to gather the scattered bills. But it was too late. The door burst open and a group of uniformed officers stormed into the room, guns drawn.
Get down on the ground.
One of the officers shouted, his voice amplified by a megaphone. They didn't resist. They knew it was over. As the officers slapped handcuffs on their wrists, she couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. The charade was finally over. He watched the whole scene unfold on the hidden camera he'd set up earlier. He had anticipated their every move, orchestrated their downfall with chilling precision. The flashing red and blue lights of the police cars illuminated the street, casting long, grotesque shadows on the walls of his home. He could hear his wife's muffled sobs, his brother's angry shouts. He felt no sympathy. They had made their choices. Now they had to face the consequences.
It's done. The package was delivered. They took the bait.
He hung up the phone, a cold smile playing on his lips. He had escaped the clutches of their betrayal, but he knew this was only the beginning. He had a new life to build, one free from deceit and treachery. He had a story to tell, a story of revenge served cold and calculated, and he would tell it well.